Ever think about what it would be like to have a personal relationship with God? And I don't mean some distant figurehead,
Yeah.
but a God who is truly present in our lives.
Yeah.
Like right here, right now.
Right.
Well, get this. We're diving into the Urantia book today.
Okay.
And this paper 5 really shakes things up.
Yeah.
It suggests that each of us has a piece of God, a thought adjuster living within us.
It's a big claim.
Yeah, it is.
A bold statement, to say the least.
Yeah.
The Urantia book really puts it out there by suggesting that this thought adjuster is an actual fragment of God himself.
Okay.
And it's not a metaphor.
Really?
It presents it as literal truth, which is pretty wild when you think about it.
Okay, hold on a sec. A piece of God living inside us? I mean, how can something so vast even begin to connect with something as, well, limited as us?
That's the paradox, right?
Yeah.
How can the finite grasp the infinite? Honestly, even the book acknowledges that our human minds really can't fully comprehend the how of it all.
Yeah.
It's too big, too complex for us to really get our heads around. So instead of getting bogged down in the mechanics, the Urantia book encourages us to explore the implications of this connection,
Okay.
to consider what it means to have this divine spark within us.
So it's more about the what than the how.
Exactly, because think about it. God isn't limited by his vastness.
Right.
He's infinitely present.
Huh.
Everywhere and in everything, including, according to this text, within each and every one of us.
Okay, that's a pretty mind-blowing concept when you really let it sink in. But if this fragment of God is already with us, why does it feel like we have to go on this long and often difficult journey to find him? It's like he's playing hide and seek, but we already know where he is.
I see what you mean. It's not so much about God hiding as it is about us needing to develop our capacity to perceive him. Think of it like tuning a radio to the right frequency.
Okay.
The signal's always there, but we need to adjust ourselves to receive it clearly.
So we're the ones with the dial that needs adjusting.
Precisely. The text uses this idea of spiritual translations.
Okay.
We need multiple shifts in perception to even begin to comprehend beings that exist on a higher spiritual plane. Especially one as infinite as God. It's our limitations, not his, that create the distance we often feel.
Okay.
But, and this is important, the Urantia book says that God isn't just waiting around for us to figure it out.
No.
It actually says he yearns for our companionship.
He yearns for us.
Yeah. It claims that his desire for connection is part of what motivates him to reach out to us, to seek us out.
Okay. Now, that's not the God I grew up with.
Right.
This isn't about proving our worthiness or anything like that.
It's not about judgment or earning his favor.
Yeah.
It's about realizing we're already deeply loved and valued, even when we don't feel it, even when we don't see it.
That's amazing.
And that's the beauty of it. This idea that God, as presented in the Urantia book, isn't some distant, judgmental figure in the sky.
Right.
He's more like a loving parent who wants nothing more than a close personal relationship with his children.
Wow.
And the question then becomes, how do we cultivate that connection? How do we even begin?
Well, how do we even begin to fine-tune our spiritual dial? I mean, where do we even start? Is it all about prayer and rituals or?
Well, that's where things get really interesting because the Urantia book makes this distinction between worship and prayer.
Okay.
And it says that worship is really about pure appreciation for God, recognizing his greatness, kind of like acknowledging the source of it all.
Okay.
While prayer often involves, asking for things we need or want.
Right. More like, please help me with this kind of thing.
Exactly. So both have their place. But what I find really interesting is this idea that we're not just interacting with one being.
We're not.
We're actually, according to this book, interacting with three.
Wait, 3 beings?
3 distinct beings. The Father, the Son, and the Infinite Spirit.
Hold on. So it's like a divine team effort.
In a way, yeah. And each one has a different role. You've got the Father, who represents that ultimate source of everything, the wellspring of love and creation.
Okay.
That's who we connect with through worship.
Okay.
Then there's the Son, who acts as a sort of bridge between our world and the spiritual realm.
I can see that.
Many traditions see Christ in this role.
Yeah.
It's who we might turn to for guidance, inspiration, maybe even intercession.
Okay.
And then we have the Infinite Spirit, who's like this active force in our world,
Right.
kind of influencing our thoughts, intuitions, even those aha moments.
Wow. Okay. I never thought about it that way. So you're saying there are these different ways to connect depending on which aspect of the divine we're focusing on.
That's it. And it's not about picking one over the other.
Right.
It's about understanding how these different facets of the divine interact with our lives.
Okay, that's a cool way to think about it. I like that. But hold on a second. How does our own personal connection with these beings fit into the bigger picture?
That's a great question. And the Urantia book gets into this really interesting concept. It's called the personality circuit.
Personality circuit. That sounds a little over my head.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the Urantia book uses this almost technological language to describe these really spiritual concepts. But imagine like a cosmic network,
Okay.
like a flow of energy connecting every single person back to the source.
So every thought we have,
Yeah.
every choice we make.
It all feeds back into this network.
Wow.
That's the idea anyway. We're not these isolated beings. We're all part of something much, much bigger.
It's a lot to wrap your head around, that's for sure. But what about people who haven't read the Urantia book?
Okay.
Like, what about those who subscribe to a different religion or no religion at all?
Well, the Urantia book actually addresses this directly.
Yeah.
It says that, morality is important, of course, but it's not the whole story. It's not everything.
Okay.
It contrasts those religions that are based on fear with those that are rooted in love.
Right.
The kind of love that inspires us to be more like God.
So it's not about blindly following a set of rules.
No, not at all.
It's more about embodying these qualities in our own lives.
Exactly. The Urantia book views all these different religions as part of this larger journey. It suggests that each faith throughout history has grasped onto a piece of the truth, whether it's emphasizing love or compassion, justice or knowledge, but none of them have captured the complete picture on their own.
So it's like each religion has a piece of the puzzle,
Yeah,
and they all contribute to this larger understanding of the divine.
exactly. It's a more inclusive perspective, right?
Yeah.
Instead of asking which religion is right,
Which can get kind of messy.
yeah, this view encourages us to look for those underlying truths, those common threads that point us towards that personal connection with God.
I like that. I mean, that's a really refreshing way to think about it, for sure. Makes me think about my own journey. The ups and downs, those times I felt totally lost, and then those moments of, like, real connection.
The Urantia book suggests that none of that is random. It's like these experiences are guideposts along the path.
Yeah, I can see that.
We're all on this journey, and this book reminds us that we're not alone in it. Not only do we have this inner compass, that thought adjuster, as they call it,
Right.
but we're also part of this vast cosmic network connected to something way bigger than ourselves.
That's a lot to take in.
It is.
This whole conversation has really got me thinking about those moments when you just feel this sense of awe and wonder about the universe.
Right.
Like those times you glimpse something much, much bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
Is that what it means to experience God, or are we talking about something else entirely?
Well, the Urantia book talks about these different levels of God consciousness that we can experience.
Okay.
It breaks them down into 3 stages, actually: the mind, the soul, and the spirit.
Okay, break that down for me. What do those stages actually look like,
Okay.
and how do we know if we're, experiencing them?
Well, the first stage, God consciousness in the mind. That's kind of where a lot of people start out.
Yeah.
It's that intellectual recognition,
Okay.
the idea of a higher power, even if we don't fully grasp it.
So it's like acknowledging there might be something more out there,
Exactly.
even if we don't know what that something is.
Right. And then you've got the next stage, which is God consciousness in the soul.
Okay.
And this is where it gets more personal. It's not just an intellectual understanding anymore. It's about feeling a connection,
Okay.
sensing God's presence in our lives.
So we go from head knowledge to, like, heart knowledge.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And then there's that final stage, that God consciousness in the spirit. This is that full-on experiential awareness. It's like a merging with the infinite.
Wow. Okay. Hold on. So we go from thinking about God to feeling his presence to actually, like, merging with the divine.
In a nutshell.
That's a pretty intense progression.
It is, and it's not always linear.
Right.
We can have these glimpses of the higher stages even while we're still wrestling with questions and doubts at the lower levels.
That makes sense. But if this thought adjuster is always there, helping us move towards this ultimate merging with God, what happens to those who don't reach that final stage in this lifetime?
That is the big question, isn't it? And The Urantia book really digs into the whole idea of death
Right.
and what lies beyond. In fact, it lays out this detailed cosmology describing all these different levels of existence that we might experience after we leave this physical realm.
So it's not all harps and clouds, huh?
Not exactly, but the core message is this. The choices we make in this life, they have eternal consequences.
Okay, so let's talk about that. What does it actually mean to, like, align ourselves with the divine?
Well, it's about recognizing that we have this free will, that we have the power to choose.
Okay.
And it's about making choices that reflect, the nature of God, as described in the book.
So love, compassion, that sort of thing.
Exactly. It's about striving to become more like that which we are trying to connect with.
Okay. But how does that work if the thought adjuster is already guiding us,
Right.
It seems like that would contradict the idea of free will, right?
Well, that's the paradox of free will, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a bit of a head scratcher.
Even with this divine spark within us, we still have the ultimate say. We get to choose. The thought adjuster doesn't force us to do anything. It's more like a guide. It points us in the right direction, whispers advice. But it's up to us whether or not we listen.
So it's like we've got this amazing navigation system built right in, but we can still choose to ignore it and steer ourselves right into a storm.
That's a great analogy. And the point is, the Urantia book makes it clear. Even God can't force us into that eternal union. That choice, that decision about our eternal destiny, that's ours and ours alone.
Wow, that is a powerful responsibility, but also a pretty incredible gift if you think about it.
It really is.
It's both humbling and awe-inspiring to realize we have that much say in our own eternal fate.
Absolutely. And I think regardless of what anyone believes about the afterlife, the Urantia book really does offer this profound perspective.
Yeah.
It emphasizes the importance of our choices, even the small ones.
Right.
And it reminds us that we're not insignificant. We're not just these random beings floating around.
Right.
We have the potential for this incredible personal connection with something so much bigger than ourselves.
Wow. Okay, so where do we go from here? If someone's listening and they're feeling both totally intrigued and maybe a little overwhelmed by all this, what's the one thing you hope they take away from all of this?
I think the most important message is this. You are not alone. You have the spark of the divine within you, a constant companion.
Yeah.
And the path ahead, it might seem kind of daunting, right?
It can be a wild ride, for sure.
But remember, you have the power to choose your direction, to seek out that connection, to cultivate a relationship with something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
It's a journey worth taking, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's a journey of self-discovery, of spiritual exploration, and ultimately, I think, of love.
Yeah.
A love that connects all of us to the very source of creation. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder this. If you could ask that thought adjuster,
Okay.
that divine spark within you, a single question,
Yeah.
what would